Hi everyone, welcome to another maths video by Maths with Sarah. So today we're going to be tackling this Venn diagram probability question. Now, for a start, there's a lot of information that they've given you. And for second, probability with Venn diagrams can get really, really complicated. And I have to say this is a slightly challenging one. That said, I think everyone can give it a go, but I do think it's a slightly more challenging one. But as with all these questions, I encourage you to pause the video about now, have a read through it, try and get your head around all of the information that you've been given, give the question a try, and regardless of how far through you get, even if you just write the first bits down or whether or not you can actually solve it or you know the method but you can't get the answer, don't worry, I'm going to go through it in a second. I encourage you to have a go yourself first. Okay, so let's get going with this question then. So we've got a Venn diagram shows information about 150 students. So we know that the total number of students in this Venn diagram is 150. Then we've got C represents students who study chemistry. P represents students who study physics. And obviously we've got this overlap of a number of students in the middle. And then we've got some students who don't study chemistry or physics. And we've been told that the probability that a physics student chosen at random, so one of these students here, is chosen at random, also studies chemistry, i.e. this little portion here, is 5/12. So then that's the information we've been given. That should allow us to work out X and Y. And then we've been asked to work out the probability, given one of the students is chosen at random, work out the probability that the student does not study either chemistry or physics. So this is our Y portion here, the portion around the outside. So they don't come into don't study chemistry, don't study physics. They're in this outside bit here. So the way that I always start with these questions, because I think they can be a little bit overwhelming just because of the sheer volume of information. The way that I always try and tackle these questions is by thinking about what we do know. So we know that we have 35 students who just study physics. So physics and not chemistry is 35. Physics and chemistry is an unknown number. Sorry, I should have written this one differently because it's physics, not chemistry. And then what we need to try and work out is the total number of students who study physics. So the only way we can do this, all the students who study physics, those that do study chemistry, those that don't study chemistry, is going to be 35 plus X. And obviously we don't know what X is at the moment, which just makes it a little bit more complicated. We also know that if we add up all of these numbers, so if we add up 47, X, 35, and Y, we add all of those together, then we get the total number of students, would be 150. Now, at the moment, some of this information may come in useful, some of it might be completely irrelevant, but that's not the point. We've written down everything that we know. And remember, you will get marks for that. Just because you haven't fully solved the question and got the answer, you will still get some marks for writing down what you do know. So we've been told that a physics student chosen at random, so out of our portion of physics students here, the probability that they also study chemistry, i.e. they're in this portion here, is 5/12. So we know that 5/12 is equal to the students that study physics and chemistry, i.e. X, divided by the students that study any kind of physics. So all of the students that are in this circle entirely. So 35 plus X. If you can get to this step, I think you've done really well, because I think this jumping from the information that you've got, all of the information in the diagram to this step, I think is the hardest part. So well done if you've got that far. So what we need to do now is we can say that we know that 5/12 is equal to this, but we can also work it out the other way around as well, which I think actually makes it slightly easier. is we can then also say, well, 7/12 therefore is all the students that study physics but don't study chemistry. So that allows us to actually get a number on it. So rather than having X, this allows us to put a number on it instead. So then we'll have 35. This is the remaining students, so i.e. all of the ones in this bracket, divided by in the same total, 35 plus X. So now we can have a look at this and we can say, right, 7 times by 5 is equal to 35. So let's do the exact same on the bottom, because remember it's all ratios. So as long as we do the same on the bottom as we do on the top, that's fine. So we know that if we do 7 times by 5, we get 35. We also know if we do 12 times by 5, we get 35x. Sorry, 35. This should be 35 plus x. Sorry, I've made a mistake there when I was writing it down. Does make the math slightly easier as well. So if we go back up here, we've then got x plus 35 equals 60. And from that, we can then work out that x equals 25. I appreciate that's quite a lot of jumps. So we've got to figure out the proportion that equals 5/12. But then from that, we can work out the proportion that equals 7/12, i.e. the opposite. And that gives us some actual real numbers that we can get a handle on rather than dealing with x. So yeah, we understand that we need to times it by 5, this one by 5 to get 35, and this one by 5, which then gives us 60 equals x plus 35. We can then work out what x is. So we now know that this students in this bracket here equals 25. Now, of course, we can go back to this second little equation that we had here, and we can substitute that value in and say, okay, well, if x equals 25, we can now calculate what y equals. If you kind of untwist all of this, you end up with 107 plus y equals 150. And therefore, y equals 43. So we can now say instead of this value for y, we've instead got 43. So the question that we've been asked, the end part of this question, after all of that, that maths and algebra and complicated stuff, we need to work out the probability that the student does not study either chemistry or physics. So it's one of the 150 students, so we're talking about all the students now, not just the ones that study physics or chemistry or whatever else. We're looking at all 150 students. What is the probability that the student does not study either chemistry or physics? So out of the 150 students, 43 of them, that's our y value, do not study either chemistry or physics. So this here is our answer to the fraction of what probability. Okay, I appreciate that that was a very complicated question, and I think that getting to these jumps here are really quite difficult. I think a lot of people, if they were given 7/12, they go, oh yeah, I can do the rest of that. But actually figuring that out, so using the Venn diagram to figure out your 5/12, your 7/12, and then the algebraic formula so that you can calculate what x is a really, really difficult jump. So well done if you got that. If you didn't, then I encourage you to watch the video, try the video again if you didn't get it first time round. If you're still having problems, then feel free to drop me a message because I'm always happy to help. And I've got a number of other videos on probability. So if you're finding this one is a little bit of a struggle, then do check out some of the others because they're not all as hard as this. This one is a particularly challenging one. And I do encourage you to subscribe to the channel as well. So lastly, thanks very much for watching.